by the armed forces of the Philippines and the Philippine Coast Guard through photos and videos. These collisions were caused by the dangerous and illegal maneuvers at sea by these Chinese vessels who were interfering with a legal and legitimate Philippine operation in support of BRP Sierra Madre. The Chinese vessels did their reckless and illegal acts with full knowledge that their movements can cause a collision. And this time, our fears happened. We are relieved and thankful that no Filipino personnel were harmed, but we are concerned by the escalation and provocations by Chinese vessels who have no business being in the West Philippine Sea. The China Coast Guard's claim that they were conducting law enforcement activities have no or zero basis whatsoever. Ayungin Shoal is well within the Philippines' 200 nautical mile exclusive economic zone. Therefore, China has no legal authority or basis to enforce anything in those waters and in the entire West Philippine Sea. They also claim that there should be prior notification by the Philippines on any resupply mission to Ayungin Shoal. Again, we ask, why should we do so? Ayungin Shoal is not Hainan Island. Moreover, their claim that their action were professional and legitimate collapses in the face of overwhelming evidence to the contrary. We commend the bravery, professionalism, and dedication to duty of our Philippine Navy and PCG personnel who by their actions represent the best of the country's uniformed services. They do their duty in the face of overwhelming odds. We consider this RORE mission as a partial success because one of our supply boats, Onaisa May 1, succeeded in reaching BRP Sierra Madre and unloading supplies. However, Onaisa May 2 sustained damage as a result of the collision and could not complete its mission. Nonetheless, the Philippines will never be deterred by the provocative actions of China. We will continue to repair, maintain, and sustain our troops in BRP Sierra Madre while said ship is on duty in defense of our sovereignty, sovereign rights, and jurisdiction in the West Philippine Sea. We call on China to stop its provocative actions, act responsibly, and in accordance with international law and UNCLOS, respect the 2016 Arbitral Award, and defend the rules-based international order. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, ADG Malaya. Up next, we have Colonel Medel Aguilar of the Armed Forces of the Philippines. Sir?
Thank you. Good morning to everybody. I'm here to narrate to you what happened yesterday that led to the collision. Our resupply vessels, Onaisa May 1 and Onaisa May 2, departed Naval Detachment Oyster Bay at Barangay Bahili, Puerto Princesa at around 3 o'clock in the morning. At around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, these two vessels have monitored through visual the presence of People's Liberation Army Navy vessel BN 631. At around 3:10 in the afternoon, following immediately after the sighting, the shadowing of the PLA Navy started with our resupply vessels. At around 4 o'clock in the morning yesterday, we have monitored the presence of at least 5 Coast Guard vessels, Chinese Coast Guard vessels, 16 Chinese fishing vessels, also maritime militia, and at least 2 PLA Navy vessels. They were already in a position to obstruct the RORE mission of our vessels. At 6 o'clock in the morning yesterday, China Coast Guard 5203 and 1 maritime militia maneuvered en route to the position of UM2 and MRRB 4409. And they were able to separate our resupply vessel from the escorting PCG vessel. At around 6:04, China Coast Guard vessel 5203 and a maritime militia shadowed and harassed Unisa May 2 to the point of restricting its movement. And then the collision happened at around 6:08 in the morning. Now let me show you a video of how the collision took place. Please play the video.
Pwedeng i-full screen natin. Ayan. And play it again, please.
Na,
Ayan, go ahead.
hindi ko magalaw.
Ayaw pag full screen.
Okay, what is being shown here is actually a footage of the movements of the different vessels involved that led to the collision. After this video, I will show it to you also the paths or the wakes that were created behind this vessel so that it will illustrate how the dangerous maneuver of the China Coast Guard vessel was conducted that led to the collision. Next slide, please. Paki-play na lang yan kasi para at least makita nila kung ano yung nilagay. Picture yan. Play, yes. Okay, this will show now the direction of the vessels that were involved in the collision. Please, paki-click lang at para lumabas yung animation. That is considering the position, the speed of the vessels involved. As you can see, Unisa May 2 did not change its course in proceeding to the objective of providing the resupply to our BRP Sierra Madre. But far from behind, China Coast Guard maneuvered to its port side, from its starboard side to its port side, while there is a maritime militia standby there that is actually restricting the movement of our resupply vessel. So it forced, actually, what we can see here is a reckless maneuver on the part of China knowing very well that a collision might take place because of that. Next slide, please. Then a closer look on what happened from behind of the Onaisa May 2. Paki-play. Anyway, I think this video is already so starting at 0700 or 7 o'clock in the morning after the collision incident, two maritime militia vessels were monitored conducting close quarter maneuvers and positioned themselves on port and starboard side, or meaning on the left and the right side of the Onaisa May 2, while two Chinese Coast Guard vessels were tailing UM2 to prevent its movement and to obstruct its resupply mission. It is also noteworthy to know that at around 0740, the UM1 was able to enter or to reach the northeast entrance of the Ayungin Shoal and moored at the port side of BRP Sierra Madre at around 0800. So all those supplies that were loaded in that vessel was unloaded to the BRP Sierra Madre. Let me now summarize what happened yesterday in 2 points. Number one, our troops, I'm referring to the crew of Onaisa May 1 and Onaisa May 2, have a mission to accomplish, and they did it in a manner that is professional and legal. They deserve our salute and the support of the Filipino people. Number two, what the Chinese vessels did is illegal and irresponsible. Illegal in the sense that their presence in our EEC is not authorized based on UNCLOS and on the arbitral award. And that their actions yesterday were in violations of the Convention on International Regulations for Preventing Collision at Sea, or CORL regs. It is irresponsible because they acted recklessly, knowing very well the high probability of collision, which will put the lives of people in danger. Let our people know, and the rest of the world, that this incident will not deter us from doing what is right, what is for the benefit of our people, and what will support and strengthen the rules-based international order. No unlawful force could soften our firm resolve. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel Aguilar. Up next, we have Coast Guard Commodore J. Tariela of the Philippine Coast Guard. Sir.
Good morning, everyone. On the part of the Philippine Coast Guard, I'll be discussing to you the details of the operation that we did yesterday in support of the resupply mission of the Armed Forces of the Philippines. Let me reiterate that the resupply operation that we just concluded is purely an Armed Forces of the Philippines mission, and that the role of the Philippine Coast Guard is only to provide security escort. These are the Philippine vessels during the resupply operation. For the Philippine Coast Guard vessels, our new commandant, Admiral Ron Hill Gaban, have committed two MRV 44-meter vessels to provide security escort to the two chartered indigenous boats of the Armed Forces of the Philippines. It is BRP Sendangan, MRV 4407, BRP Cabra, or MRV 4409. As you can see, for these two vessels, the intention is that for each indigenous boat, there will be a Philippine Coast Guard vessel that will ensure the safety and security of each chartered vessel. This is the operational area of the supply operation for the Philippine Coast Guard. We came from Point C, that is the Buliluyan port. Our Coast Guard vessels, together with our embedded media friends, departed last 21 October around 11 a.m. To proceed to Point B, which is Sabina Shoal or Escoda Shoal. The staging area is actually our rendezvous point for the chartered boats. And then immediately after the arrival of Unaiza May 1 and Unaiza May 2, that will be the time that the two Philippine Coast Guard vessels will also depart from Sabina going to Ayungin Shoal. It is worth noting that as early as 9 p.m., a day before the resupply operation, we have already monitored the presence of China Coast Guard Vessel 4301, wherein it is already shadowing BRP Cabra, even before the Unaiza May boats have arrived. In this particular video, you can see Chinese maritime militia vessel already doing close maneuver toward MRV 4407 and Unaiza May 1. So as early as 5:55 in the morning, we can already monitor a lot of Chinese maritime militia vessels within the vicinity of Sabina Shoal. It will be shown later how this Chinese maritime militia participated in blocking the Philippine Coast Guard vessels. This particular video showed, this is actually the reason why BRP Cabra is separated from UM2. As you can see, this happened around 6:06 in the morning based on our record. At 6:06, the Unaiza May 2, the one that was that collided with the China Coast Guard vessel, has already been separated from BRP Cabra, which happened around 6:08 from our record. So, some of you might be wondering why Unaiza May, the one that was that collided from the China Coast Guard vessel, is independent. No, it's not supported by Philippine Coast Guard vessel. This is actually the reason. It's because BRP Cabra was already corralled by the two Chinese maritime militia vessels, and it is surprising that the Chinese maritime militia is even bigger than the Philippine Coast Guard vessel, also supported by the China Coast Guard vessel. So from the photo that was shown a while ago by Colonel Aguilar, you can see that the Coast Guard is a bit far off, no, from the Unaiza May when it was it collided from the China Coast Guard vessel. It's because this was the particular incident that is happening. We are trapped by the two Chinese maritime militia as they pursue the Unaiza May from proceeding to Ayungin Shoal. And then, based on our record, around 6:08, which is like 2 minutes right after we were trapped by the two Chinese maritime militia and China's Coast Guard vessel, this video was already shown by Colonel Midal a while ago. So from the previous slide, I've already explained to you why Unaizame is on its own when she collided with China Coast Guard 5203. Also at the same time, around 6:05, in the case of MRB 4407 and Unaizame 1, the Chinese Coast Guard 21551 is also doing the same thing. It attempted to separate the MRB 4407 and UM1 from being escorted, as you can see from this video. So with the past three videos that I showed you, we can actually conclude that the Chinese Coast Guard's original intention is to separate the Philippine Coast Guard vessel from the escorted indigenous boats. Around 7:50 in the morning, Unaizame 1 was successful enough to enter the Ayungin Shoal. In short, they have good seamanship skills to outmaneuver those China Coast Guard vessels and Chinese maritime militia that blocked them during this operation. On the other hand, the Unaizame 2, which was damaged because it collided with the China Coast Guard vessel, although she attempted to still deliver the supplies going to Ayungin Shoal, it's not because of the damage that she incurred. That's why she wasn't able to deliver. But it is because of this two Chinese maritime militia vessels and China Coast Guard from behind that despite of her damage, she was still being guided away from LS-57. Although I think one of the main reasons that there is a need for Unaizame 2 to reach LS-57 is, of course, for us to assess the damage. But still, the Chinese Coast Guard didn't care whether she was damaged, whether she is unseaworthy. The Chinese maritime militia vessels and the China Coast Guard still push the Unaizame away from Ayungin Shoal, as you can see from this video. So if you're still wondering where is the Philippine Coast Guard BRP Cabra, MRB 4409, why it hasn't reached yet the location of UM2, this is the condition of BRP Cabra. In short, the BRP Cabra is surrounded by Chinese maritime militia vessels and two China Coast Guard vessels. That's why it wasn't able to reach UM2 to provide assistance and to also evaluate the structural damage that it incurred from the collision. Around 8:12 in the morning, with the full intent of the Chinese government to completely block the Philippine Coast Guard vessel BRP Cabra MRB 4409 from assisting Unaizame 2, another Chinese maritime militia vessel collided with MRB 4409 from its port quarter. I would also want to recognize the bravery of our media friends that despite of the danger of collision, he still wanted to have a perfect angle of that particular incident. Around 10:40 in the morning, we were able to outmaneuver those Chinese maritime militia, and of course, probably when it was already decided by the armed forces of the Philippines for UM2 not to proceed anymore in continuing its resupply mission, the Philippine Coast Guard vessel MRV 4409 was able to reach the location of UM2, and then it was safely moored alongside our Coast Guard vessel. From the video that I showed you, it appears that we are free from harassment of the Chinese Coast Guard vessels, but this is actually the photo. You have UM2 moored alongside with MRV 4409. You also have MRV 4407. And Ayungin Shoal is on the left side, no? So it goes to show that all of the Chinese maritime militia are spread out together with the 4 China Coast Guard vessels to make sure that the Philippine Coast Guard vessels and Unaiza May 2 will be prevented from pursuing its resupply operation. Around 11:54 in the morning, Unaiza May 1 has already reached the location of the 2 Philippine Coast Guard vessels together with UM2. That's the time that some of the crew of Unaiza May was decided to be transferred to the Philippine Coast Guard vessels for safety reason. Because, as I said, we haven't really evaluated yet the structural damage that Unaiza May 2 incurred because of the collision. So, as a matter of safety measure, the crew, some of the crew of Unaiza May, and of course, those media friends that were embedded in this particular mission was transferred to the Philippine Coast Guard. Around 1:35 in the afternoon, with the entire contingent, the entire resupply contingent is proceeding back to our stations. We were able to monitor 2 Chinese PLA Navy vessels, PLA Navy 631 and PLA Navy 500. Around 3:50 in the afternoon, the entire supply contingent 4409 and 4407, together with the indigenous boats, we have already reached the location of Sabina Shoal. But what is interesting in this photo is that you can still see China Coast Guard 21551 still escorting us. No, when we departed Ayungin vicinity, the China Coast Guard 21551 also joined us in our way back to Sabina Shoal. The intention of the armed forces of the Philippines, and of course with the concurrence of our commandant of the Philippine Coast Guard, is that instead of the 2 MRV vessels to go on separate destinations from the indigenous boats, the Philippine Coast Guard vessel MRV 4407 will accompany the 2 Unaiza Mays as a matter of safety precaution as well, to make sure that there will be a Coast Guard vessel that will conduct search and rescue should there be any problem of seaworthiness for Unaiza May. That's why 4407 escorted these 2 indigenous boats, and 4409 is the only vessel that went directly to Buliluyan Port with our media friends. This is the damage that was sustained by BRP Cabra from its port quarter. The same thing, we have yet to evaluate the damage that we incurred because of the collision that we had with the Chinese maritime militia vessel. As you can see, it is that thick. It is not as something that we can say that's just a scratch on the paint. No, malalim po yung tama niya. So, we're still going to evaluate how it affected the integrity of the hull of our vessel. For the entire resupply operation, we were able to monitor 5 Chinese Coast Guard vessels who really participated in the shadowing, dangerous maneuver, and blocking of the entire resupply contingent. And then we also monitored 8 Chinese maritime militia vessels who also actively participated in blocking the resupply contingent. It is also worth noting that for the first time, the Chinese maritime militia now are also doing such dangerous maneuver that even collided with our Philippine Coast Guard vessel. Before, they were just taking orders from the Chinese Coast Guard vessels, supporting the Chinese Coast Guard from blocking the Philippine Coast Guard and separating the Chinese, the indigenous boat. But in this particular operation, the Chinese maritime militia came that close to the Philippine Coast Guard vessel, which is the reason why it collided with the Philippine Coast Guard. And then we also monitored 8 Chinese maritime militia through AIS. And as I mentioned a while ago, there were 2 PLA Army Navy vessel, 500 and 631. As far as the collision regulation is concerned, in which the People's Republic of China is also a signatory state, we would like to highlight the 3 rules that we believe the Chinese Coast Guard and the Chinese Maritime Militia violated in this particular resupply operation. The first one is the Rule 2, or the responsibility of the vessels. This rule emphasizes that nothing in the collision regulation can absolve any vessel from the duty to avoid a collision. Deliberately blocking a vessel not only increases the risk of collision, but also disregards the fundamental principle of taking action to prevent a potential collision. And also for rule number 7, the risk of collision. This rule states that every vessel is required to use all available means appropriate to the prevailing circumstances and conditions to determine if a risk of collision exists. Rule 7 is considered in conjunction with other relevant rules and factors, such as the rules number 5 for lookout, rule number 6 for safe speed, and rule number 8 for action to avoid collision. And also for the rule number 18, the responsibilities between vessels. This rule requires that a vessel shall keep out of the way of another vessel if the latter vessel has the right of way. By deliberately blocking a vessel, you're not allowing the other vessel to proceed in accordance with their right of way. And then I also, on the part of the Philippine Coast Guard, we have also summarized the People's Republic of China's actions against the Philippine Coast Guard vessels and the chartered indigenous boats. In terms of major challenges, PRP Sendangan have received a total challenge from China Coast Guard of 17, while the Philippine Coast Guard vessel Sendangan has challenged the presence of China Coast Guard vessels 15 times. For BRP Cabra, it challenged the China Coast Guard vessel and Chinese Maritime Militia vessels for 64 times, while they were challenged by China Coast Guard vessels for only 14 times. For the dangerous maneuvers, we have listed 4 instances. The China Coast Guard vessels carried out dangerous maneuver towards BRP Sendangan and BRP Cabra. And then for the Chinese Maritime Militia's participation in blocking the Philippine Coast Guard vessels, we have listed 5 instances that the Chinese Maritime Militia have actively participated in blocking the Coast Guard vessels. And then for the collision, we of course have 2 incidents of collision. The China Coast Guard vessel colliding with Unaiza May 2 and the Chinese Maritime Militia vessel 0003 to BRP Cabra or the MRV 4409. As I end my presentation, I would like to share with you the statement of the Commandant. He said, our Commandant right now, of course, we now have a new Commandant, Coast Guard Admiral Ronhil Gavan. He said that the importance of the recent to supplies mission's partial success demonstrated the Philippine Coast Guard's capability to handle provocations from China in a professional and resolute manner without escalating tension. He also added that as enforcers of maritime safety regulations, he believes that the China Coast Guard should respect at all times the maritime safety provisions of the United Nations Convention of the Law of the Sea and the Convention on the International Regulations for Preventing Collision at Sea, or COLREGS of 1972, to ensure the safety of both parties involved, avoiding any unfortunate incidents that could put lives at risk. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you very much, Commodore Tarriela. Up next, we have Ambassador Teresita Daza of the Department of Foreign Affairs. Ma'am.
Maraming salamat po at magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. Allow me to read on the part of the Department of Foreign Affairs, our resolve to continue pursuing our mandate of protecting and upholding the country's legal maritime entitlements remains firm. We're making full use of diplomatic processes and are exercising all possible actions available to us. That includes summoning the Chinese ambassador, which we did this morning. I was just informed that because the Chinese ambassador was out of town, his DACM represented him. The matter was of urgent and important, and the department felt that the DCM was needed to be met by our Assistant Secretary Eileen Mendiola Rao. Ayungin Shoal is part of our exclusive economic zone and continental shelf, and we have sovereign rights and jurisdiction over it. Therefore, as we did in the past, we intend to clearly convey our position that we have every right under UNCLOS to carry out our legitimate activities in our maritime zones, and that we do not accept any form of interference. China, as a major power, bears a heavier responsibility of contributing to peace and stability in the region. Finally, I wish to take this opportunity to thank our partners in the international community for their steadfast support in the defense of the rules-based international order. Their statements of support show the level of concern that the international community has over persistent efforts to undermine UNCLOS. End of statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Daza. We may now open the floor for questions. Yes, ma'am.
Morning, sirs, ma'am. Katrina Domingo from ABS-CBN News. The Philippines and China established an emergency direct line between high-ranking officials in January 2023. That wasn't available, or at least the Chinese officials did not pick up calls from the Philippines during the water cannon incident. May we know the status of the direct line as of now? Was it used during this collision? And would you say, what is your assessment of its effectiveness as a tool between the two nations?
Thank you for the question, Katrina. So I think one of the first questions is, was it used? As far as I know, it was not used in this incident. And I'd also like to answer the second, which is in terms of the usefulness. Incidents in the past have shown that the usefulness of this mechanism is rather limited. So for this particular incident, the the department decided to pursue the usual diplomatic route, and that is to summon the Chinese ambassador and to issue a protest.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Good morning, Celerina Monte from NHK. So, ma'am, just to clarify, so the DFA has already filed a diplomatic protest against China.
Yes, Celerina, we've already filed. The DCM was summoned. So the protest was also conveyed, and I'd like to give you the latest statistics when it comes to protests. So as of October 23, we've filed a total of 465 protests since January 2020. And out of that is 122 were lodged under this administration of our president. So as of October, and if you're looking at 2023, there are, let me just double check, 55 if I'm not mistaken. Let me just double check that number and get back to you, yeah?
Can I make a follow-up? Yeah, follow-up po.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Ma'am, you have mentioned that China, as a big country, should be responsible in like contributing to the peace and stability in the region. So are you saying that China is disrupting the peace and stability in the region? And to Commodore Tariela, you have mentioned several violations under Colreg by the Chinese vessels. So what will be the action of the government? Will there be any filing of any, I don't know what action or petition before any court or what? International court? Thank you.
I think what happened today with the incident yesterday, the Philippine government has come out to actually strongly condemn this dangerous, irresponsible, and illegal action of the Philippine Coast Guard and the Chinese maritime militia. We strongly believe China, this is our exclusive economic zone, this is our waters. China has no right to linger in and around the waters of Ayungin Shoal and actually to interfere with the Philippines' legitimate activities in and around the waters of Ayungin Shoal. The Philippines exercises sovereign rights and jurisdiction over Ayungin Shoal, which falls under the Philippines' exclusive economic zone and continental shelf as affirmed by the 2016 arbitral awards. We also want to underscore the Philippine vessels were undertaking a routine and regular humanitarian missions for Philippine military personnel aboard BRP Sierra Madre, consistent with Philippine rights under international law. It's rather difficult to imagine how these activities could be deemed as threatening or provocative to China. Not only did China actions endanger lives at seas, they're also illegal, dangerous, provocative, and deplorable. They undermine mutual trust, confidence, and respect that should underpin our bilateral relations and put into serious doubt the sincerity of the Chinese side to uphold the understanding between the President and President Marcos as President Xi.
Question?
On the part of the Philippine Coast Guard, of course, we can document and, of course, support the diplomatic actions of the Department of Foreign Affairs. Although I have mentioned those are rules that were violated by China for the collision regulation, all of this will still be submitted to the Department of Foreign Affairs. As to whatever diplomatic actions, of course, as what the FA has mentioned, they are going to be the one to handle this.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Good morning po. Can I address my question to Yusek Malaya and also Ambassador Lassa first? Although there's a statement already from the State Department, just for soundbite purposes, does this kind of action from China trigger, no pun intended, the MDT?
The MDT is invoked when there is an armed attack. The incident that happened is aggressive and dangerous. It's a provocation on the side of China. But at this point, whether it will constitute an armed attack that would allow the invoking of Mutual Defense Treaty is something that needs to be studied.
But of course, we know the complexion on the ground, right? I mean, the ones who are boarding the Chinese militia vessels and then the Coast Guard vessels of China. Are we factoring that kind of maybe nuanced deployment in figuring out whether this can trigger the MDT?
Okay. I think it's very clear from what we have shown you today, from the videos and the photos and the deployment of China's overwhelming deployment in the Ayungin Shoal, that the provocative actions are on the part of China. It is not the Philippines that is increasing tensions. It is China that is increasing tensions in the West Philippine Sea, especially by interfering and blocking our legitimate resupply mission to Ayungin Shoal. And we consider this development as alarming, that the Department of Foreign Affairs summoned the Chinese ambassador this morning. And we would like to emphasize that, no, that is a clear and unequivocal message being sent by the Philippines to China, that we do not, accept what is happening, no, that there has been a collision already, and as we have seen very clearly through photos and videos, and as will be reported by our embedded media friends later on, by several networks, that their actions were the ones that caused this collision. Okay. The urgency of the matter required the Philippine government to the Department of Foreign Affairs to summon the Chinese ambassador to express our displeasure over what happened. No? Because it was serious enough that it could have caused, it placed the safety of our Filipino crewmen on the line, and it would have caused more disastrous results. No? And we are just very thankful that nothing happened in this event, but it may happen in the future. That is why we are right now considering all possible actions, no, future actions, but those future actions, of course, will depend upon instructions from higher ups. And the President, of course, and the Secretary of National Defense and all relevant cabinet members have been informed by this development. But of course, whatever future action the Philippines may undertake will depend upon what instructions we receive from higher ups in the government.
Thank you,
Just
sir.
a quick, sorry.
Froilan Garcia
Next
from
question.
Sanjay Shimbun. With the job precarity facing the Philippine personnel, every time it conducts its supply mission in a Ayungin zone, is the Philippine government inadvertently allowing them to be used as bait to trigger the MDT?
Of course not. No, what we're doing here is a legitimate Philippine operation. No, we are resupplying our troops in Ayungin Shoal. We are not undertaking any dangerous maneuvers of our own, as we have seen in the videos and photos. Our ships were doing what is rooted and routinary in this purpose. It is China who is utilizing the situation for its own advantage, no, to assert its claim over Ayungin Shoal and the entire South China Sea. It is not the Philippines, as I said, that is increasing tensions.
Thank you. Next question. Yes, ma'am.
Good morning. I'm Joanna Balyaran from GG Press. My question is addressed to Ambassador Daza. Ambassador, how does this incident affect the plans to file a case versus China's aggression in the South China Sea? Does it bolster the Philippines' case? And where do you plan to file the case?
The matter about filing another case is something that's still being studied by the government. But of course, all incidents like this will actually bolster the case that it's not the Philippines that's the aggressor, but the other party, which is China, that's actually undertaking dangerous maneuvers and blockades and putting at risk not only vessels, but more importantly, the people who are manning the vessels.
Thank you. Next question. Yes, sir.
Sir, Manny Vargas po from DCWB. Kay Commodore Tariela, yung pinakita niyo sir na damage dun sa BRP Cabra, does it mean na magpapalit tayo sir ng barko na magbabantay sa WPS to assess muna yung damage ng BRP Cabra, and may escalating situation, handa ba or do we have enough precautions para ingatan yung limited assets ng Coast Guard to ensure na meron tayong presence sa WPS? Thank you po.
Well, for the first question, whether we're going to replace BRP Cabra because it has damage, no? I cannot answer that for now because, as I said, we have yet to evaluate the damage that BRP Cabra incurred because of the collision. Secondly, how are we going to protect our limited assets, no? From the previous resupply operations, you can see that, as what I've been mentioning, the Philippine Coast Guard has always been deploying skippers of BRP, different Coast Guard vessels, not just BRP Cabra, who have the ability to prevent from collision from happening. It just so happened that for this particular incident, the BRP Cabra was collided from behind. But from the previous photos and even the videos that I presented now in this resupply operation, you can see how skillful our commanding officers, no, in preventing having a direct collision from the Chinese maritime militia or even from the Chinese Coast Guard vessel. As I said, this accident only happened because we were hit from behind. And should this particular incident be occurring sana from our bow, no, from our path, this would have been prevented.
Thank you. Next question. Yes, sir.
Hey, good morning. Bonabilo from Al Jazeera. I know that you've already explained what happened and the story from the Philippines side, but there have been a few statements from the Chinese side as well from yesterday. If you would just please address some of the points that the Chinese made. Number one, that the Onaiza was it one or the supply boat deliberately crossed the bow of the Chinese Coast Guard ship. Number two, BRP Cabra reversed, which caused the collision with the Chinese maritime militia vessel. Siguro, two muna, and then two more later.
Okay. Sige, let me start by answering that, no? The statements made by China are not supported by evidence. You know, parang kinuha lang sa hangin. All right? As we have shown you specifically through videos and photos, no? The Unisa May 2 was, as shown by Colonel Medal Aguilar and by Coast Guard Commodore J. Periela, were moving in a regular direction, and it was the Chinese Coast Guard vessel that blocked the path, no? Kita naman natin sa wake, makikita mo sa wake din, no? So I think that kind of statement, no, collapses in the face of overwhelming evidence. And as I said kanina, there is media that was embedded in this particular RORE mission, and it will be your colleagues who can make that, you know, judgment, no? If China does not believe the statement coming from the Philippines, but well and good, no, kung yan ang gusto nila, but there are other witnesses, third-party witnesses, in fact, embedded media coming from different media institutions who can prove that it was not deliberate on the part of Onaiza May 2. Now, on the part of the Philippine Coast Guard, yung movement of a Cabra, may I turn over the floor to Commodore J. Tariela.
Thank you, sir. For the Philippine Coast Guard, as you saw from the video, no, hindi namin to splice, hindi namin inedit. So I don't want to respond to such a statement of the Chinese government, because obviously we don't respond to lies. What we only present are all facts. These are supported by videos, these are supported by photos, and we have embedded journalists here. As far as our government is concerned, we have the freedom of the press, so we cannot dictate whatever reports that they're going to do in the next couple of hours. So I would give the responsibility to tell the right narrative, the factual ones, not made up, to those journalists who were embedded in that particular operation.
Okay. Two more points, sorry. Just two more points that China raised, and they've been actually raising these 2 points time and again. They've said again that the Philippines had promised to tow away the BRP Sierra Madre, that's one, and that China had asked the Philippines not to deliver large-scale construction materials to the BRP Sierra Madre, but the Philippines keeps delivering these construction materials.
I'd answer the first one. In terms of the promise, we're not aware of any of such understanding. And I think no one in the Philippine government will ever enter into such agreement, abandoning its sovereign rights and jurisdiction in its EEZ and continental shelf. Moreover, the President has already made a statement on it. he already said that he categorically denied the existence of it, and if whether there is such an agreement, he rescinds it. I think it would help if the media also help us in actually countering narratives that do not have basis. And this is one narrative that's coming from their end.
Thank you, ma'am. No, sorry.
Construction-
Next question, yes. Sorry. Construction.
Please be informed that BRP Sierra Madre is our vessel. And it is within our rights to repair it, to make sure that it is habitable for our troops that are manning there to be safe and to at least have a good night's sleep.
I just add this. The Chinese narrative always says that we're violating their sovereignty, but they are in our exclusive economic zone. They are there illegally, they're intruding, they're undertaking dangerous maneuvers. And the resupply mission to and the upkeep of the BRP Sierra Madre are legitimate Philippine government activities in our country's exclusive economic zone, which are all in accordance with international law, particularly UNCLOS. As a low tide elevation, Ayungin Shoal can neither be subject of a sovereignty claim, nor is it capable of appropriation under international law, which is a fact that was affirmed by the 2016 Arbitral Award. China cannot, therefore, lawfully exercise sovereignty over it. China's illegal exercise of maritime law enforcement powers, interference with legitimate Philippine rotation and resupply mission, deliberate and reckless dangerous maneuvers against our vessels, and any other activity that infringes upon Philippine sovereignty, sovereign rights, jurisdiction, and territorial integrity are violations of international law. We demand that China immediately stop its illegal activities in our waters.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, good morning po. I'm Camille Alamia from the New York Times. I just want to ask, the tension keeps on escalating, as you all said, fear of China, but we've been hearing the same or similar things as response of the Philippine government, summoning the Chinese ambassador, diplomatic protests, and rallying international support. But China is being belligerent and continues on pushing the limits. So should the Philippines step up in its response, the Philippines and like-minded allies?
Thank you for the question, Camille. The summoning of the Chinese ambassador is not something we do every day. Okay, we file diplomatic protests every now and then, but we don't summon the Chinese ambassador all the time. So this is also a clear message on the part of the Philippines. The DFA took that into consideration, took the gravity of the urgency of the situation, and decided that this was an event that required the Philippines to summon the Chinese ambassador. Now, on the issue of, despite provocations, we continue to proceed in this manner, precisely because by continuing to resupply the troops in Ayungin Shoal, we are actually implementing the 2016 arbitral ruling. Okay? Because this is our way of asserting our rights. No? So, no matter what odds we face, we will continue to do what is necessary. We will supply our troops in Ayungin Shoal, no matter the overwhelming odds. We will continue to provide supplies and food and gasoline to our fishermen who go to Bajo de Monsinloc and elsewhere, because this is the Philippines implementing the 2016 arbitral ruling. No? By not doing so means that we are abandoning the arbitral ruling, and the arbitral ruling is binding not only to the Philippines but also to China. So this is our way of saying to the world that we are implementing the ruling and the world should support us. And as mentioned by Ambassador Tess Daza, we have received a lot of encouragement and support from various countries, of which we are thankful for. As to other things, that you may wish us to do, like, for example, filing another case in another tribunal, or increasing the deployment of additional ships from the Philippines, that will be decided by higher-ups, and we have still to receive instructions on how to proceed moving forward. But as you very well know, all options are on the table, and the government is considering other possible measures in the future as we move forward.
Follow up.
Thank you.
Can I just make one follow-up? Sir, anyone po can answer. May update po ba dun sa, or kung may plans ba on joint RORES to ayungin, like with other like-minded countries, and the status of that?
The RORE mission is for us to undertake.
Thank you. Yes. Follow up on Camille's follow up on Camille's question. China's been consistently tried blocking and doing a lot of brazen acts recently for the past few months. Are we only limited to reporting this and also lodging verbal agreement, not verbal, and to the 400 something that we have lodged against China, do we get to have any reply on those non-verbal? Thank you.
Yes, China has been replying to some. Sometimes it's it takes a number of protests and actually it has one omnibus reply. So if you can say, the communication is ongoing, which is important, I think, at this point, because from the department's perspective, we're always hopeful that China will act as a responsible member of the international community, and that it will respect our sovereign rights, sovereignty and sovereign rights of our countries. And if it wants to be a respectable member of the international community, it will do so and act so. Yeah.
We're only limited to reporting and lodging note verbal against this provocative
There are
actions.
a number of tools available with the department, but it's not in the nature of the department to actually register the action that will be undertaken. As you all know, sometimes some of you may have noticed, it takes a little bit of time for us to issue a protest. But a protest is undertaken. But it's something that is actually studied, reviewed, and assessed, and the necessary action that needs to be done within the parameters of the department is something that is undertaken. As I mentioned, the department remains committed. It will do its share, but you have to understand the parameters where the Department of Foreign Affairs is working.
Thank you. Next question. Yes, at the back, ma'am.
Regine from Washington Post. Just to be clear, I wanted to ask sirs and ma'am if is it accurate to say that this is the first time a collision of this nature has happened between government and government sanctioned vessels? Tama po ba? Okay, so it's I wanted to ask like how precedented or unprecedented this is, and of course we've already been talking about this, but for the sake of the soundbite, if you could tell us about how urgent, how dangerous it is, because some people might see the video and think it's say anticlimactic, it's a bump, ganyan. But maybe if the experts could tell us how close are we to like yun, parang yung integrity ng hull, like technical terms like that, like what does it mean for the danger of the crew, the Filipino crew on those ships?
What is dangerous here are the reckless maneuvers of China Coast Guard. And that should be known to everybody. Because without that, there will be no problem. They are not even authorized to be there in the first place. So, let this be their message.
Did you want to add something, Sir Jay?
Yes.
Yeah.
As to your question, how dangerous the collision that happened to Onaiza May and to the Philippine Coast Guard vessel, let me first highlight the fact that the chartered indigenous boat that the Armed Forces of the Philippines is using to do the resupply operation is wooden hull. No, some of the structure of this chartered boat is actually wooden. So you can just imagine how big the China Coast Guard vessel. Kung hindi siya talaga nakaalis from that collision point, it will be totally wrecked. No, sirang-sira sana yung Unaiza May. So that's how dangerous it is. It is dangerous for the lives of the crew of Unaiza May and also for some of the Philippine Navy who were supposed to be rotated for our LS-57. On the part of the Philippine Coast Guard vessel, also the same thing. This kind of collision is very dangerous because it affects the seaworthiness of the Philippine Coast Guard vessel. It is also worth noting that the distance of Ayungin Shoal to the nearest port, particularly Buliluyan, is around 160 nautical miles. For us to be able to reach to the nearest port to save our Coast Guard crew and also for the crew of the indigenous boat, that's how dangerous it is. So it is important to mention this, that those kind of collision caused by a dangerous maneuver jeopardize the safety and the lives of our Coast Guard sailors and the crew of the indigenous boat.
Thank you, sir. And, yes, sir.
Yes, Rihanna, I think we have time for 2 or 3 more questions, and then we can wrap up the press con.
Just a quick follow-up din po. And I think Ma'am Daza wanted to say something, but I'll just add my quick follow-up. I know you're still evaluating for the seaworthiness of that damage done to Unaiza May. But I wanted to ask, what would be an accurate way to describe what you already know about the damage? Is it still fit to sail?
Right now, Unaiza May is still on its way to the port, so we haven't really conducted the thorough evaluation of its seaworthiness.
Can I just
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
China has the obligation under Article 58 of UNCLOS to give due regard to the rights and duties of the Philippines as a coastal state. Furthermore, China's actions are contrary to the flag state obligations of the government of the People's Republic of China under Article 94(3)(c) of UNCLOS to take necessary measure to ensure safety at sea and prevent sea collisions. The Chinese vessels' dangerous maneuvers restricted the PCG's vessels and the UM-2's navigational paths, which was the direct cause of the collision, and a violation of Rules 2, Responsibility, Rule 7, Risk of Collision, and Rule 8, Action to Avoid Collision of the 1972 International Regulation for Preventing Collisions at Sea, or Coleridge.
Thank you. Yes.
Hello, good morning. I'm Cliff Benzon from Bloomberg News. Given the unprecedented nature of this collision, is Philippines concerned that China is using the Israel-Palestine and the conflict and also the Ukraine war to test the U.S. alliance ability to manage multiple crises at the same time? And I also ask my second question because they're somehow related. Do you have any sense or are there indications that U.S. and its partners are distracted or unable to provide the same level of support to the Philippines compared with prior to the Middle East conflict?
On the second question, I think the mere fact that a number of our partners have actually come up with statements, several of them immediately have come up since yesterday, shows that there is a steadfast support to defend the rules-based international order, and that there's also a continuing concern over countries that continue or persist in terms of efforts to undermine this rules-based order. So in terms of waiving, I don't think so, because if you noted, the number of statements that came out from our partners is indicative of the support that they have and their concern raised regarding what is happening in our waters.
Yeah, just to add to that, no, we don't see any wavering on the part of the United States in its support for the Philippines. In fact, the U.S. Embassy yesterday immediately released a statement, as mentioned by Ambassador Daza. And yesterday, likewise, there was a statement coming from the State Department itself, from the spokesperson of the State Department, where the United States said that the United States stands with the Philippines, no, in the face of these provocative actions in Ayungin Shoal and in the West Philippine Sea. And the United States has repeatedly said that its commitment to the Philippines is ironclad, no, not only mentioned by President Biden, by the Vice President, but again, in the statement from the State Department, it also said that the U.S. reaffirms that Article 4 of the 1951 U.S.-Philippines Mutual Defense Treaty extends to armed attacks on Philippine armed forces, public vessels, and aircraft, including those of its Coast Guard and anywhere in the South China Sea. So, notwithstanding the events all over the world, no, we do not see any wavering on the part of the United States in its support for the Philippines.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hello po. Just want to ask first, construction materials did we bring doon sa Ayungin Shoal? Kasi sabi po kanina parang meron tayong construction materials na dala. So ano po sanang specific construction materials is that? And second is that, moving forward, ano na po yung adjustments na gagawin natin? Meron ba tayong ina-explore perhaps to use helicopters instead sa pagde-deliver ng mga supplies natin po?
On the materials, it's just to maintain and repair that facility, that vessel that we have there.
So
No need to enumerate in specific what are those, just to assure everybody that it is for the upkeep of the vessel. On the operational details, I will not discuss that.
All right, thank you. Last question.
Yes, go ahead. Sorry naman. Balibar Tulame po from Business Mirror. Magandang umaga, sir, ma'am. Sir, it appears kanina sa video, napalibutan po yung mga barko natin ng mga militia, Chinese militia. Is this the first time that they're doing it? And is it also a matter of law enforcement? How about we send more ships to escort our resupply vessel? Because clearly, the area is within our exclusive economic zone based on the 2016 arbitral award. It's final and executory. Tama po ba? Final, binding, and executory na ba natin dapat? So we should have executed our law enforcement activity there. We should have arrested, or we should have taken those militia, Chinese militias into custody.
Well, first of all, no, for the past 3 months of the resupply operation, we have already documented that the Chinese maritime militia are now actively participating in the blocking operation of the Chinese Coast Guard. So this is not something new. As I said, this has been happening for the past months. I think what is only worth noting in this particular resupply operation is that the Chinese maritime militia collided with the Philippine Coast Guard vessel. As to your second question, whether are we going to deploy more Philippine Coast Guard vessels to support the supply operation, that is another possibility, but as what Colonel Midel mentioned, that's part of the operational details and we're not permitted to disclose that. For the third question, would it be possible for the Philippine Coast Guard to arrest Chinese maritime militia vessels? I don't want to answer that directly, but let me give you once again the summary of the vessels that were deployed in this particular operation. We only have 2 Philippine Coast Guard vessels. They have 5 Chinese Coast Guard vessels, and they have 16 Chinese maritime militia. So the question is it possible for us to arrest those Chinese maritime militias that are bigger than the Philippine Coast Guard vessel? As to the Coast Guard, we would want to, but I don't think that is something that we have to prioritize right now.
We are outnumbered, no, sorry, overnumbered, bobo, outnumbered by by Chinese. So can we ask Ambassador Daza, the Americans, to help us deter the Chinese?
That's not for me to answer. It's not within my to be able to answer that. But I think the Americans have been very supportive in a number of fronts, whether it be in terms of disaster management, in terms of increasing effectiveness and efficiency, in terms of the modernization program of our armed forces. But as I said, it's not for me to answer that question.
All right, thank you very
Ambassador
much.
Daza,
No, I'm so
Ambassador
sorry.
Daza.
We are going to
Just
end.
one last question, please.
All right.
I-combine na natin. Ma'am, curious lang ako, what was the reply of the Deputy Ambassador kanina? You met, the DFA met with that representative. Now, what was the reply of the Reni?
I just was informed that it was held and that who met with whom. But in terms of more details, I do not have it. But it would be safe to assume that they will repeat the narrative in terms of what they've been sharing out with the media.
And the diplomatic protest with regard to this has been filed.
So now it's 55 for 2023. We already have 55 diplomatic protests, including that one, because that's the number that I've given is as of 23 October 2023, which is today.
55 this year. Okay, thank you. Thank you for your time, sir.
Sir Malaya, isa lang po. Last na. You have mentioned that
Kasi mas humihirap yung mga tanong nyo habang tumatagal eh.
you have already reported the incident with the president. So, we're wondering what's the directive of the president because as of now, Malacanang hasn't yet made any statement.
As I said kanina, there are meetings happening right now, no? In fact, there are high-level meetings happening right now in relation to this event, no? What happened yesterday, the collisions that happened. So, we don't know what is transpiring right now because we're here in the press conference. So, we'll probably have to wait for further announcements from Malacanang on what other steps are to be undertaken in response to what happened yesterday. Thank you very much for your attendance in today's press conference. Maraming salamat po.
Everyone may claim their snacks outside. Thank you everyone for attending.